Photography and budget, two words that you wouldn't think would go together, let alone in the toy photography world. Case in point. But today I'm going to show you how you can get started with toy photography and get some really nice looking photos at little to no cost. If you're familiar with the photography world already, you've already heard this phrase a million times, and if you're new, you're going to hear it at some point. And that is, it's not about the gear, it's about the photographer. Meaning that no matter how much money you put into buying the nicest gear, eventually what it comes down to is the photographer's eye and how they capture those shots. And while I do mostly agree with this, I just want to point out that eventually down the line, investing in high quality gear, especially lenses, is going to help you achieve, I think in my opinion, better results, of course, with applying the right skills and the right knowledge to all of your shots. But don't worry, if you're new to photography and you don't have a budget to put hundreds, if not thousands of dollars into gear right now, then that's what this video is for. Let's get into it. So before we actually get started taking photos, there's a few key items we're gonna need to get started. The first and the most important is, of course, something to take a photo with, and that's gonna be your smartphone. So I'm using the Samsung A52G. Odds are if you're watching this, you probably have a way better phone than this. I've had this phone for almost like 6 or maybe probably like 6 years or something like that. And if you're using a newer iPhone, the good news is that those cameras are almost just as good as the beginner line budget cameras offered by camera companies. So we're just going to be using the camera app that comes on the phone to take our photos. And it is worth noting, if you have a mirrorless camera or a DSLR camera already, that's great, but just for the sake of simplicity for today's video, we're just going to be using the smartphone. But don't worry, I've got a future video planned just for that. So the next thing we need to talk about is lighting your photos, and honestly, good lighting is the difference between your photos turning out bad and your photos turning out amazing. And the first source of light that we're going to be looking at today is free to use, and that is the sun. Shooting in natural light is great because you don't have to haul around equipment and lighting panels for your shots. The only downside is that, of course, you kind of run on a timer throughout the day. And the lighting throughout the day is going to affect how your photos turn out. So for instance, shooting at midday, the lighting is going to be very harsh. You can still get good photos, but you might not like the look of them. Whereas if you shoot closer to sunset, you're going to get a nice soft golden yellow lighting. You've probably heard the term golden hour before. That's honestly one of my personal favorite times to shoot. I'll put some examples up on the screen here of photos I've done in natural light that I think have turned out really good. Another light source you can use, and this is maybe more for doing indoor shoots, is a desk lamp like this one. Honestly, desk lamps are great. They're super powerful lights. I mean, they have to light up your entire desk so you can work on your homework. I don't do that very much. And honestly, they're super affordable. I think I got this one at Walmart for almost like $10 or $15. One thing you do want to look out for though on the lamps is you want to make sure it has this diffuser on it. Without the diffuser, the light is going to come across as very harsh. Whereas with the diffuser, it's going to soften up that light and make it look like one of these studio lights, for instance. And this last lighting source I'm going to show you, this is just a super cheap light panel that I got from Walmart. It actually comes with the pack of 2, but the other one's broken, so I can't show it to you. Sorry. But anyways, this is a great option for also indoor photos. But what's great about these is that they are actually RGB. Also have options for warm light and cooler light. They work great for indoors. They're a little bit closer to studio panels like these, and they're not super spendy. So one thing I did forget to mention is that we're gonna need something to actually edit our photos with. And I know some people just like to take the picture and get the look right in camera, which is totally fine, of course. But for me personally, I do love to touch up and edit my photos. I think they make the final version pop more than the original. But anyways, today we're going to be using Adobe Photoshop Mix, which, good news, is entirely free to use. It's a mobile application, and there is also a desktop application as well if you prefer to edit on like a laptop or a desktop unit. The one downside to using Adobe Photoshop Mix is that it can only process JPEG files. If you're familiar with photography, you probably know the difference between RAW files and JPEG files. If you don't know the difference, basically what it comes down to is RAW files have much more information in them compared to JPEG files, meaning when you're editing in post, you have a lot more freedom editing RAW files when it comes to dynamic range. Whereas with JPEG files, you don't really have that. So my phone only shoots JPEG. It's not new enough to shoot RAW files, so that's why I'm choosing Adobe Photoshop Mix. But if you do shoot RAW files, you could absolutely get a subscription to Adobe Lightroom. That's amazing. It's an amazing application. I use that personally for my photo editing, and if you're going to be shooting raw photos, 100% would recommend, although the subscription fees are kind of ridiculous. Hopefully Adobe doesn't see this. Anyways, let's get into shooting photos. Okay, so this is where we're gonna take our first set of photos, and since the whole point of the video is to be as budget friendly as possible, I figured I'd choose a figure that's pretty inexpensive, and that is, of course, the Star Wars Black Series Mando figure. So I picked this spot, you know, like this background. I love the metallic background of the grain bin, but I thought it'd be fun to compare some photos I took, you know, using my R10 and 50mm f1.8 lens compared to what we're gonna get here with my cell phone. So yeah, it'll be fun to compare those images in the end, but let's get him posed up and get some pictures. So here's the pose that we're working with, and the first thing we want to do is get the shot composed how we want it to be. I like it from the lower angle down here. So now what we want to do is get the image, you know, properly exposed. So the first thing I always do is I start with my shutter speed. I dictate this off how much action is going to be going on in my photo. You know, yeah, am I going to have effects going off in the background? Is this going to be more of a portrait shot? So in this case, there is no action going on. So, you know, we can keep the shutter speed fairly low. We don't want to go too low because as you can see, the image is going to be overexposed. And then also we want to be able to mitigate our hand movements and stuff. So I'm going to keep it at 1/250 here. The next thing I mess with is called ISO. And essentially, for those that are new to photography, that is going to be, I like to think of it as gain. Essentially, by increasing it, you're increasing the signal coming into your camera sensor. I like it right here at 100. I think we have a good exposure right here. Next, we want to look at white balance. So generally for outdoor shooting, I like to keep it between 5200 to 5500. I think we're going to go up a little bit, just warm it up a little bit at 5500. And then I don't have control over my aperture, so normally that would be what I would do before ISO even. And since we can't control aperture, we're gonna keep our settings right here. So get the shot lined up. And there we go. So now that we've taken our photos outside, now we're gonna explore what it's gonna look like lighting our photos using this desk lamp and then the lighting kit that I got from Walmart. So this is the scene that we have set right now, and it's not really much of a scene as you can see, but more of just like if you're wanting to take pictures of like a cool figure that you got, you just want to set it up on the table and get some nice pictures of it. That's kind of more of what this is going for right now. So let me turn the studio lights off and turn this desk lamp on. So you can see that this doesn't actually look that bad. Let me zoom out a little bit. So you can see compared to the subject, I have it kind of off at an angle here. And with the angle, the light is not directly in front like that. Because personally, if you do it like this, I don't like this look very much. It just looks too filling. So what I like to do, even with lighting like my YouTube videos, I'll take my key light, so it's off to the side here, and then angle it up at a 45-degree angle like so. And this is what this is going to look like. Honestly, I love the look of desk lamps on figures because even like this angle from directly over top, like it just looks like a street light, like how you'd kind of expect to see Mando. So it's just a cool look. Again, experiment with different angles and stuff, but let's get into taking the photos. So again, we're going to go into our pro photo mode, get set up in the orientation that we want to shoot it. So we're going to keep it right here. So again, just going over our settings. First of all, we want to assess what action is going on in this photo. In this case, there's no action going on at all. It's just a nice portrait shot. So I'm okay keeping the shutter speed at 1/125. Again, just to reiterate, if there's gonna be like moving parts going on in your photo, like maybe some fireworks or some water effects, you're gonna wanna crank up the shutter a little bit, probably to like 1/1000. But I'm gonna keep it down here. As you can tell, kind of up in the highlight region, up on the top of the helmet, it does look a little overexposed, and we can brighten this up a little bit in post. So we're gonna bring the ISO down just a little bit, 125 there. And then the white balance, we're going to fix that because the background looks a little bit too pink, so we can cool it down a little bit. I'm liking that right there. And we can leave focus on auto. Now let's take our picture, and voila, look at that. Honestly, that does not look too bad. Alright, so for this next one, we're going to be using this lighting panel again. So since this one is going to be pretty similar to the desk lamp, we're going to treat this one as more of a creative shoot. So we're going to be using the RGB function of this to bring some color wash into our photo. This is the pose I've got going. He's gonna be looking directly up, so it's gonna be kind of a close crop photo, kind of like this. All right, so let's get the scene set up. We're gonna start by turning off these lights, and now turning on this. Should already be set to the color wash that we wanted. So now, since the lighting overall is a lot darker, we're gonna have to make some adjustments here. So number one, I'm gonna keep shutter speed where it's at for now, just to mitigate the camera shakes from my hand. Next, I'm gonna take ISO, and we're gonna raise that up just a little bit. Just get a nice healthy exposure. I'm chilling with 250, and white balance we're gonna keep right here just to keep that nice purple hue. Make sure we're focused and angled how we want. Honestly, I might try a lower angle like that. All right, so now that we've taken all of our photos, now we can begin the editing process. So, as you'll be seeing on the screen, we are now in Adobe Photoshop Express, and this is kind of what it's gonna look like once you get your photo loaded up. So the first thing we're gonna wanna do is go down to the bottom here and click on Adjustments. Now, as you'll see, there are a few options on the screen here of what we want to edit specifically. So we have the full option, so that's just gonna make global edits to the entire photo. Then there's the subject, so Adobe will do some masking there to mask our subject, so now we can make edits to just our subject. And then lastly, we have background. And it looks like it's done an okay job at the masking. If you go ahead and create a mask using those three tabs up here, you can go over to selection tools right here, and now you can actually take this and erase which parts you want to be in your selection, which is pretty cool. I'm not going to go ahead and do that right now because it did a pretty decent job with what I selected, but again, if you want to get really picky and really fine detailed on it, then absolutely go ahead for it. It might be a little bit easier doing it in the desktop application or maybe on an iPad, just something with a bigger screen than this. So first we're going to start with some global edits, so we're going to make sure we're selecting the full tab right there. And now on the bottom here, we can kind of go through and make our adjustments from there. So the first thing that kind of stands out to me is that there is a lot of white happening up in that upper right-hand corner. So we're going to go over to whites, click on that, take our slider and drag it down just a little bit. You can see what happens. If we drag it down all the way, it looks like that. Dragging it up all the way, now they're super blown out. Obviously we don't want that, so we're going to take our whites. This is back to normal right here and drag it down just a little bit, just so it's not quite as boom right in your face. So typically what I like to do when I'm editing on Lightroom, the first thing I'll do is I will make adjustments on my tone curve just to give it some nice general contrast, but there is no tone curve in here, so we kind of have to do that with the options that we have here. So essentially the tone curve, you're just messing around with the whites and the blacks, so we're going to go ahead and select our blacks right here, and I'm going to drag those down a little bit. See, it creates a little bit of contrast. As opposed, if you have them boosted all the way up like this, you can kind of see how everything just looks kind of washed out and faded. So this is back at normal, and we're bringing it down just a little bit, and it kind of creates some nice contrast. Next thing I like to do in global edits, we're going to take the shadows and bring those down just a little bit like that. That looks pretty good. There's really nothing else in here that I would want to edit. Possibly the temperature. You could mess around with the temperature, see what it looks like. It's a little bit more warm. Like, I don't like that at all. Or if you bring it down, I don't like that look. I might warm it up just a tiny bit. Not very much though. Now, I think the last thing I'm gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and make a subject mask here. And I'm gonna brighten up just Mando by himself. We're gonna bring some of the shadows back, not too much. And then we're gonna take our highlights, bring that down just a little bit. There we go. And now let's do a background mask and take exposure. Just gonna bring the exposure down just a little bit. And there we go. I'm pretty happy with that. And again, this app has a lot of really cool features that you can go ahead and experiment with. I'm not gonna go ahead and mess around with them just because I don't think they're gonna add anything to the photo I took. So I'm gonna leave this photo here where it's at, and let's move on to the next photo. Okay, so jumping into our second photo here. Honestly, it doesn't look too bad so far. What we're gonna do first, I'm just gonna apply a crop just to make it look a little bit more consistent. We're gonna go ahead and do just a basic crop, make sure it looks good. This is the Instagram size. That looks good. Now we're gonna go over to adjustments. So we're gonna do a mask on our subject here. Select subject, that looks pretty good. So now we're gonna do shadows, I'm gonna bring the shadows down just a little bit, give this a little bit more of a contrasty look. The temperature looks pretty good to me. And now let's go to full, just to make some global adjustments. Go to exposure, bring it up just a tiny bit. Like, you don't want to overdo it like this. You can see that's completely blown out. So this is back at 0. Just a tiny bit, just to bring a little bit more presence there. And then to compensate for like the highlights up in this upper area up here, we're gonna go to highlights and bring it down just a little bit. And I'm really happy with that second photo with the color wash. This one might be a little bit trickier because the lighting was darker. Again, this is another advantage as to why, you know, shooting with raw files is a little bit better, especially with darker situations. With this photo, you have a little bit more information to work with, so you're able to boost up those shadows a bit more. And then of course, working with RAW, you're able to denoise those as well. Honestly, not looking too bad. So again, go over to adjustments on the bottom. I like where the background is at right now, so I don't want to make too many global adjustments. So we're gonna go ahead and hit subject and make adjustments from there. So let's go to exposure, bring the general exposure up a little bit, take the highlights, bring those down about there. Shadows, I don't know if I want to boost those too much because you can see how bad that looks. So this is back at 0. I'm gonna bring the shadows down just a little bit. Now just to add a little bit more contrast, I'm gonna go ahead and click backgrounds, do a background mask, bring those shadows down as well. And to me, this looks pretty good. Again, just for your personal taste, you're gonna wanna go through here and kind of experiment on your own just to see what you like and stuff. So just to wrap things up, if you made it this far, thank you again for watching this video. Hopefully what you got from it is that you can get some really good photos on a budget. If you're just starting out, you don't need to necessarily invest a crazy amount of money into, you know, top of the line gear just to take some photos. Myself as a musician, one saying that I've worked a lot with is work with what you got. So no matter what you're working with, whether it's a smartphone, you know, a Canon R10 like I have, or, you know, a really nice camera like the R5 II or the R6 III, like just make do with what you have. You can get really good results if you really put your mind to it. Thanks again for watching. Consider leaving a like and subscribe as it helps get my content out to more viewers like you. And I love making videos like this, so I'd love to do it more. Thank you again for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.